Hello, Business Athlete Nation. You got Keith Bilous here with a little bit of tinkling of the ivories. This is Dad Music with Keith Bilous and our guest, Dai Manuel.
Woo!
How are you?
Keith, man, I've been waiting for this one for a while. It's funny, when you're out there and you're active and you're a big content creator like yourself or myself, you have cool people showing up in your feed all the time. Every once in a while, there's just a vibe that sort of emanates throughout, and I've been looking forward to connecting with you, man.
Dai, do you struggle with the same thing I struggle with as a father? There's some days I look in the mirror and ask myself, man, am I a good dad?
There's been some pretty hard moments with my kids. I have two daughters.
Hello, Dai Manuel.
What's up? Hey, Keith. It's good to see you. Man, I like the Offspring licks in there, dude. That was great. That totally took me back to the 90s.
Exactly. So hello, Business Athlete Nation, and hello, 2% Solution Nation. We are doing something fun and new today. Keith had Dai on the show, and that was a clip that I had to throw out there. So I had Dai on the show back in, I think, November, December, dating.
I was going to say it's about this long ago, right? About this long ago.
Yeah. And we had such fun. I said to Dai, I'm like, dude, we need to do a show about dads.
Yeah.
Oh. He's like, I think we should. So I'm a dad. He's a dad. And I got a show called Live in the Lab with Keith Bilous. He's got a show called The 2% Solution. We threw it into a blender, Dai Manuel, and we created two dads in a lab trying to be 2% better.
I love it. It's like, you know what? I've never seen anything. It's quite so nice come out of a Vitamix. This is great. It'll be fun.
We thought for our listeners today and the viewers that our ambition here today was for you guys all to get to know Dai and myself. And why we're doing this. Our goal here is to do 20, 30-minute pops in the trunk, put some content on the shelf for all you dads out there, maybe you moms too. But dads, maybe our kids, Dai. I don't know. I think our kids are going to listen to
this. They've listened to some of my episodes, my podcast, which I think is great. I've even had my eldest daughter on as a guest, which was really cool, very well received. But you know what? At the end of the day, us dads, I think, are underserved. Do you know what I mean? Like, mom's got it figured out. I look at my wife, I look at her social connections. I'm like, man, we are slow to get there as fathers. And I think a lot of it has to do with vulnerability. Who else is our role models and who's influencing us? So I think as we're bringing on great examples of other dads that are striving to go from good to great, I think it's just going to inspire the other dads out there what's possible. And I think that's the best thing to do.
Isn't it though? And I think that's our goal, right, Dai? Like our goal here is to leave something out there for the guys listening to go,
And it's actionable steps too. We get examples of people doing good things to create great results. It's awesome because it's just a wonderful example of something that we have access and that we can do as well. But sometimes you just got to see someone go first.
It's true. And it's funny when you say go first, right? Because you and I were talking about this, and we were even talking about this off the air. I'm going to suggest, there's probably a lot of guys listening right now going, geez, I would like to start a show, or I'd like to do a podcast, or I'd like to join Keith and Dai. And we are the first two dads to say, come join us.
That's right. Totally.
We want other dads to join the show, join the conversation, offer up your tips and advice. As a matter of fact, we have a dad on the show next week with Dai, not one kid.
I know. Not two, not three.
Not four.
Let's just go right to six. Right to six.
Could you imagine? So when you're booking a holiday, you got to book it. Do you book the whole airplane?
That's 3x what I got. And I'll tell you, I couldn't handle 3 times the work. So I'm good with my 2. I'm just like, wow. Full disclosure, I had aspirations when I first met my wife. I mentioned to her, it'd be great to have 3 or 4 kids. Trust me, once we got to 2, I was like, nah, I'm good. I realized, nah, 2's good.
So let's keep going. Let's interview each other for the audience. So you start. You got 2 kids. Who are they?
Yeah. Oh, man. And you know what? It's funny to say kids now because I know they would correct me very quickly. They're young adults. They're young adults because they're now 18 and 20. And actually this spring, they'll both be having their birthdays, 19 and 21. So it's a different stage of life now. My wife and I have been empty nesters now for the last few months. Both my girls are off at university. And so it's been an adjustment for us. But they're great kids. My eldest is studying acting for stage as well as film. and she's almost graduated, and she's done a lot of film projects. There's a couple in some of these small film festivals, so she's got big aspirations, and she's definitely got the talent to reach those. And my youngest daughter, she's at the University of Victoria, which is on Vancouver Island. I live in Vancouver, and she's just studying general studies with the hopes to get into psychology maybe one day. And but again, I remember what it was like being 18, going to university, and being like, yeah, I'm going to change subjects and majors just like I change underwear, right? So it's pretty frequent as my interests change, but it's been great. Yeah, they've taught me a lot in these last couple of decades being their father, but also I like to think I've instilled some good qualities and habits in them as well. It's mutually beneficial, right? Having kids, I think. What about you, Keith? How many you got?
I have three. I have a going to be 17-year-old in 2 weeks. I have
Nice.
a going to be 14-year-old in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and I have going to be an 8-year-old in. And actually, so and my 8-year-old is my bonus daughter, not a stepdaughter. She's my bonus daughter, and so she's going to be 8 coming up in June.
It's
Yeah,
fun.
so I have the added dynamic of a blended family. So you have the two daughters. I have a boy and two daughters, and I had a moment last week, Di, when my 16-year-old, now going to be 17 in 2 weeks, got in the old Jeeper
Mm.
and drove out of the driveway for the first time. And I
Wow.
swear, my friend, it was just yesterday he was driving down the driveway on his bicycle.
Right.
So you're talking about your girls going to university and college. So it's weird, isn't it? When all of a sudden you wake up and because you probably still feel like you're 18, yet your daughter's 18.
Yeah, as I always jest with some friends when they
Yeah.
start asking me for some my input on certain things. As we get older, it's just funny how we seem to just gravitate to older people, presuming that they've got all the answers. Right? I get people asking me questions. I'm like, that's a question better suited for a 20-year-old. And you know what? My daughters are closer to 20 than I am. Okay. So I'm almost 30 years removed from being 20. So I'm no longer relevant in that conversation, but my kids are. And it's
Yeah.
scary to say that. It's scary to say that.
But you probably still feel like in your brain you're 20. Like you don't like, because I know I,
Yeah. Physically, I put so much emphasis into holistic well-being, and that's I'm talking about mental fitness, physical fitness, emotional fitness, spiritual fitness, all these aspects. And I truly feel I'm healthier and fitter today at 47 than I was at 27. And I may not be lifting as much, but I'll tell you, my performance in life has improved drastically. And that didn't come without a lot of intention and a lot of work. But
yeah.
is it worth it? Hell yeah, it's worth it. And you know why? Because I know in my second half of life that I'm knocking on the door, I want my second half of life to be more fun than my first half. I really do. But you
Yes.
need to have some intentionality. You need to have some a healthy foundation there, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So you talked about taking care of yourself. I know it's a big value of mine as well, showing the kids and just ensuring that they recognize the importance of taking care of oneself for the second half of life. Do you think the girls have got that from dad? Are they active? Or do they take care of themselves? Do they see
Yeah.
the way that you take care of yourself?
Yeah, great question, Keith, because I know you have this influence on people around you, especially your own family. It's amazing kids, they watch everything, right? And whether
Yes.
you think they're paying attention or not, trust me, they are. They know what's going on. They feed off the energy.
Yes.
They're empaths naturally. They can just tell when their parents are off or if they're doing things that aren't aligned with who they typically are. And we have to remember, all of us learn. And the neuroscientists have proven this. So if you're a data head like me and likes the data and likes the science,
Oh, yeah.
which I do, I prefer
Yes.
that,
Yes.
then she pulling it out of the air and saying, yes, this is how I feel. And there's a place for that too. I'm not here to question faith or spirituality, but there's something to be said about science and hard data that's been proven. And when we look at certain things, we learn through two modalities, and that's mentorship and modeling or role model. Just think about how you've learned in your life. It's probably those two pieces have been a big part of it. And so when you think about that, our responsibility as dads, as fathers, as husbands, as sons, as brothers, as men, I think, is to try to always be the best version of ourselves. And
Mhm.
what are we modeling to the next generation? What are we passing down to them that maybe we're not even conscious that we are? And that's my invitation to dads is listen, I hope you all feel like you're doing a good job. But what would it look like to be doing a great job? Like, what would that take? What would that be if you had to describe the difference between showing up and being a good version of you versus being a great version of you? And that's where the work comes in. I think anybody can be good. I think we just naturally are good as humans, right? We are. We're good. We want to be kind. We like to be treated kindly.
Mhm.
But to be great, well, it takes work. It
It
takes
does take
work.
work, yeah, and doing it consistently. It's
Oh, yeah.
interesting to hear you say that because I would share with you that I went through that moment, die 7, 8 years ago, So my son's 17, he was 10. I remember the moment I was in my Jeep. I was interacting with some social media. I might have been acting like a fool, building my personal brand at the time. And I looked at his eyes, I looked at my eyes, and I'm like, I don't like how I'm acting and feeling and acting in front of him.
Ooh.
He's going to begin acting and behaving this way. That's not good. So I stopped. I shut down my social media profiles and I left social media. Became a ghost because I didn't like what I was portraying in front of my kids. And like you said, what they take in even when you're not noticing, right? You're just doing your thing and they're watching you from behind your shoulder and you're not even thinking they're watching you.
Yeah.
And so I hear you loud and clear. I just left. I'm like, nah, I got to leave it because I needed to become a great dad. I was going through a divorce, going through some personal stuff. And I thought I was a good dad, but in order to become a great dad, that was a decision I had to make.
Yes. Yes.
Because that's one that I knew was going to affect them.
That's a hard one too. You think about just the effects of social media on our culture today versus what it
Yes.
was even 10 years ago. Like
Yes.
there's more access to information. The phones have only gotten more sophisticated. Our access to information on just mobile devices, period, is better than most computers we ever grew up with, right? I remember my old Commodore 64, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
64-bit. Whoa, this thing's awesome. And I look at what kids have to deal with today. Like I look at my own daughters and I'm like, gosh, the amount of images that are constantly showing up in front of their eyeballs that are being
Yes.
put there by some algorithm and constantly feeds into that. And I like to think that we've spent a lot of time educating our kids around just healthy use of screens
Mm-hmm.
and access to information. But I'll tell you that they're still kids. They are naive and they will always push the envelope, right? Because they think they know better. We've all been there. I was there too at 18 through whatever,
Yeah.
32.
Yeah.
But it's just trying to be there to try to give them an idea of what the potential paths look like, but also what they might expect to walk those paths. And then you got to let them just make their decision, right? And be okay with that. But it's hard. It's hard.
Yes. Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
Di, so here's a question for you. Our audience, what are you hoping our audience gets from our
Mm.
discussion on a week by week basis? What's your goal for them to get from you and I?
I think it's the same thing that I would hope to receive, and I hope to receive from us having these conversations, but also selfishly speaking, because I know we're going to have some great dad guests on here,
Yes. Yeah.
and I know I can keep learning from these other individuals, and my hopes is to create collectively an ongoing conversation that other dads feel comfortable to engage with,
Yes.
and because I think some of the subject matter I know for sure will be challenging at times, will be heavy at times, because
Yes.
we're here, we're going to talk about what's raw and real and it's the good, the bad, and the oh gosh, are they really talking about that?
Yes.
And that's our commitment is to be raw and real and recognize that yeah, it doesn't mean we're having the prettiest and most uplifting of conversations, but bear with us. We'll get through to the other side where there's always actionable steps to move the needle forward. And I think that's the best thing about this. It's a collective learning and engagement. And the more dads that engage, the better collectively we all can do. As they say, rising tides raises all ships, right? And so I think it's like more dads the merrier, right?
I agree with you. I think that when we started talking about this vision and pulling it together and audience, I said to Di this morning, I said, hey man, if we're stressing about pulling this thing together, then we're actually going about it all the wrong way. It should be
Totally.
fun. It should be built in the open because there's an audience out there that I think want to become part of the conversation. And I want them to feel safe being part of this conversation. I want them to not be afraid to knock on your door, knock on my door, say, hey, you know what? I got a story. I got a story I want to share. I have a good friend who's been raising an autistic daughter. And he's like, I'd love to be on the show and share some of the challenges that my wife and my family has to deal with and some of the things that we consider because we know, there's other listeners going, okay. So the more we can share, the more vulnerable we can be. I think the better this entire experience is going to be for everyone. And I will offer this to the audience too. We both show up.
Yeah.
I do a daily show. Di does a regular show. So if somebody's considering committing to this,
Mhm.
our plan is to go live every Friday and then drop new episodes into your podcast machine every Friday, the following Friday. So you guys will always have fresh content for us.
Yeah. Always. And once we've got probably about a half dozen of these episodes, we will have a proper podcast where it'll be audio primarily, but then the video obviously lives on Keith's platform, and I'll be
There you
repurposing
go.
sharing that on my own socials as well. And it's access to information. But it's the right information at the right time that often produces the right results for us if we follow it with the right actions. And I think that's what we're
Yes.
going to try to do is weed through all that information. Because let's be honest, I think about when I became a dad. I was really young, right? And Keith, you were too. You were young when you first became a dad.
Yeah.
And at 25 years old, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? You know, I got 7 years away from moving from home. And I'm like, now I got to be responsible for one of these little things. And I just remember fully prepared for it. I didn't really understand what it meant, but you learn quickly. You know,
Yes.
it's like you when that baby's born and you're looking at. I remember when my daughter was born, and I don't remember the last time I'd sobbed so uncontrollably. But happy tears. I never really understood what people meant by happy tears until I was 25 and my first daughter was born. I just remember it was like Niagara Falls, pardon the cliche there, but it was just constant. And my shirt was drenched. It looked like I was sweating, but no, it was just tears. And I knew in that moment, it didn't matter how uncomfortable I was going to be in life, it was worth getting uncomfortable for her.
Yes.
And, but also I realized I didn't have any network at that time of other dads to learn from.
Mhm.
And I think, selfishly speaking, I would have loved to have had access to this kind of information, these types of conversations, this type of community potentially. Like it's so I think that the underlying pinning of why we're both so motivated to do this is also to help the next generation of dads.
100%. That's
Yeah.
where I
Yeah.
get off on this. I really want to help other dudes that are like, oh man, I like that Dai guy. I like what Bilous is talking about. And I think that, no, not I think, I'll confidently say we have to offer. Listen, there's a dynamic with two daughters, right? There, you don't have a guy, you don't have a boy and a girl, you have two daughters, and there's a whole different dynamic than there is with a guy and a girl. I have a dynamic of my own son and daughter, and then I have a bonus daughter. So it's a blended. So we have dynamics to share with the audience, right? Experiences. Right. We're 20 minutes in. Our goals are 20, 30-minute shows. Any last couple comments before we wrap her up today on our first inaugural introductory episode to our audience?
I think this is an invitation to the audience specifically. Good. Is any dads out there or parents, period, that are I'll bring this up because I know in the past, a lot of the times when I've put certain content out, especially if it was really dad-centric content, it was amazing to see how many wives or partners of other men or fathers would be tagging their spouses in the content.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing this up because, yes, this is how we get the word out there. So any parents that feel that there's people that you know that need to hear some of these conversations, or they have a great story to tell that can help the audience and community, obviously it's connect with us, share topics that are challenging you right now. What would you like to see us talk about? What would you like to see us find in an expert to bring on the show? Because I think, you know, what we're really doing, Keith, and what we've talked about is this collaborative relationship with a community, an audience, and really collaborating to create the best content that serves the greatest amount of people to create the greatest amount of good. And I think that's the last two bits I'd like to throw in. And you know, what are your thoughts?
I agree. The more the merrier. So as you said, people that want to be part of the conversation, this is really an open invite. I know that our ambition really wasn't to get too deep into dialogue today for the audience. We wanted to keep it light. We wanted to keep it welcoming. Really, audience, think of Keith and Dai standing in front of the building, arms wide open, doors wide open, saying, here's our platform. Exactly. Come on in and join the conversation. The water's warm, and we want to have good dialogue, challenging dialogue. And I love the idea of bringing guests on, experts, and so forth. And like I said, next week we got somebody joining us with 6 kids. That's going to be a whole conversation in itself. It's funny. I talked to him last week on my own show, Live in the Lab, and I know he's joining you on 2% Solution. And his name is Chad Hufford, and he's like, "Oh, I have 6 kids," and I almost fell off my chair. I was like, because
Chad, overachiever in everything that he does, huh?
Right? Because it just unlocks all these questions in my head, like renting a car, staying in a hotel, what's your food bill, like just some of the obvious ones.
I just remember back with my mom and my brother and I both being over 200 pounds, over 6 foot, growing up as, you know, active teenagers, especially between the ages of 15 and 18. The food bill was almost equal to what my mom paid a mortgage per month. It was like, that was two of us. And so I can't even imagine what 6 kids would look like, you know? It's just, one of he's got his own farm. He's growing his own food. Because I think you need logistically to own your own channels, I think, at that point, to manage the logistics with 6 kids. Holy smokes. Anyways, I know he's going to be dropping lots of wisdom bombs for us.
I think he is.
Strategies.
That's it. So Chad Hufford joins us next Friday here live in the lab with Keith and Dai. We're going to talk 6 kids. You just said something where the light went on. So my mom comes from a family, her dad, since we're talking dads, well, he helped produce 13 kids.
Oh, dude. Oh man, were they Catholic? I just gotta ask.
Yeah, and they were on a farm. So you're right. So it was so
Yeah,
because I guess
labor.
that's exactly it, isn't it?
It's it, man. That's it. That's awesome. I just keep thinking. I don't know if you're a Monty Python fan, but I know I am. And
Yes.
the,
Yes.
the meaning of life, that opening
Yeah.
song, "Your sperm is sacred," and then just like the constant popping out of these kids. She's in there doing the, oh, there's another one. I envision that scene at Chad's place. I'm like, dude, how do you do this? You know?
Oh
And
my
so,
god. Yeah, yeah. So,
it'd be good.
Chad runs a financial services company up there up in Alaska. So maybe he is actually creating his own, he's creating his own firm, right? So
I think so.
he's got the kids are gonna have the ultimate book.
Got a hockey team. He's got pretty much a hockey line. That's pretty
Yeah,
good.
that's
pretty good.
exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah, that's but I'll tell you, if I was investing with Chad Huffer, gee, we're just pumping Chad up here. If I'm investing in Chad, I feel pretty good knowing my money's going to be safe with the family business for a long time because he's got Brood to take care of it for a long time.
Yeah, he's definitely guaranteeing legacy, right? That's pretty good odds there. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. But either way, I my hats go off to literally the dads out there that have very large families, because I realize how much energy it takes, and to be that good to great dad, you're splitting your energy among six, right?
Yes.
I can't wait. But also from every conversation I've had, I mean, he's a great dad.
Yes.
Great dad.
100%.
So that's why I'm like, how the hell do you do it all, Chad? That's what I want to know, selfishly speaking. I'm like, how the hell do you do this?
Do you have a favorite?
He's not going to say that on air, I bet, but we'll see if we can get it out of him.
After 7 days in a week, I guess you can rotate one per day of the week, right?
Oh, and it leaves the wife only for one day.
Oh,
my
man.
wife's not going to like that.
Yeah, the dynamics, and I gotta imagine too, because I even myself died before we say goodbye. Parenting an 8-year-old compared to parenting a 17-year-old, like just how time, generational differences, like how you as a dad change as well when you parent, right?
That's right. That's right. And you
So
think about us, just I imagine like you got some interesting perspective on that with the bonus daughter, because
yes,
it's almost like a redo.
no, that's exactly it, and I've learned a lot through that experience. I've learned a lot how to parent differently, how to communicate differently, and it's been a wonderful experience, frankly.
That's huge. Yeah, we'll have to dive into that a bit more too.
Absolutely.
I think that's intentional learning. It's like if I was given a second chance to have another pair of daughters, what would I do differently? Would I do anything differently? I know there's about a million things I would do differently, but only because I've changed so much in the last 20 years. Who I am today would parent a child differently than the guy that I was 20 years ago. That's all. Is it a good thing? I don't know. I'm like, I'm not having any more kids, by the way. So, no ideas there. So I'm going to listen to you on that answer, Keith.
Yeah. You know what? We'll have to bring. So I had somebody on the show a couple weeks ago. He's 65 and he has a 4-year-old. So he's on the other, and he has an 18, 20-year-old daughter. So he is in basically your shoes, Dai, starting again later. So we should bring him on because I wonder what that's like too, right? Starting.
That's awesome.
Isn't it though?
We're living. I look at longevity experts today, like David Sinclair, and there's a lot of them that are speaking to longevity, and we want longevity, long lives, but also healthy lives. Right? So we're talking about health span, but quite literally, they say that the person that's going to live to be 150 is already born. He's already alive on this planet. That person, and so we're going to start to see more of this longevity happening. And I know when we talk about female anatomy and all that, there's hormonal challenges and changes that happen in that 45 to 55 range, right? But for guys, it's interesting that we can continue to have kids for pretty much forever, right? Like it's interesting when you think about that. I wonder how this is going to impact if longevity means it goes longer and we have longer lives.
Yeah.
Does it mean that this will become a more common thing that we see older generations having younger kids again? I'm just curious because I've seen this a couple times. I've got a few friends that are in their mid to late 50s that have only recently in the last 5 years had kids. So similar, but not quite at 10 years older, but a number of people in my network. Yeah.
And you actually want, so then to your point, Dai, you wonder then, let's face it, up until forever, it's always been when a female becomes 30 to 35, it's okay, the window starts to close. But that's changing too. So do females and males start having children later and later in life, to your point? If we're living longer, why don't we?
And economically, it makes way better sense when I think about how I did it. It's like, it does make more sense, but also I'm also on the flip side now where I'm like, I'm going to say Nestor, I'm 47. I feel like amazing. And I'm like, okay, I've got a lot of life left ahead and I don't have to change any diapers. Yay. So I don't know. I'd like to hear from those people on the other side and just to hear how it's been to adapt. Because I think there's going to be more of this. I really feel that that's going to be, because we already see that generations are having kids a bit later in life. And I wonder how that will impact cultural as well as family dynamics. I don't know. I think it's really interesting, man. This is stuff that we get to explore with this show. It's great.
And is the world, I saw a title recently on a headline, Dai, is the world ready for more people living past 100 as well? Like just that whole ideology, right? Yeah. You know who want to have in the show is Elon, because he seems to make babies every time he goes, right?
Hey, everybody, if Elon, make sure you tag him in this feed. We'd love to get him on. I know he's also got his opinions around parenting, right?
Yes.
And it'd be interesting to just
get
that take.
That's it.
For any of those guys, I wonder about those very interesting characters that have built massive platforms, massive networks, massive businesses. And I wonder, how do they balance the dynamics of being a father as well as these high-powered CEOs and founders, right? Because I just can imagine, like, they're pulled so much every day. How do they still maintain that time for their family?
I wondered that too. So I'm going to use the name. I'm not trying to create a polarizing discussion on it, but
sure.
What would Donald Trump be like as a father? And I'm serious, right? Like so busy, so polarizing as a human being. But I bet you if you talk to his kids, they probably thought he was an awesome dad, right? And as for who are you and I to judge? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I would imagine that their kids, before they can make any comments, would have to go through the PR manager, So I just know that they've got to protect certain perception, and perception is reality. But as we've learned, when we look at, I think a lot of people would have thought the royals had a fairly solid upbringing, and all of a sudden you get Prince Harry throwing down in his autobiography, right? Like just slamming the royal family, and yet perception was that they're a solid unit. And so it's interesting when you start to think about those dynamics in these high power families. It's like, how are the family dynamics? Because I would love to find someone that's in that position, but yet they still honor the values all of us hold dear to ourselves when it comes to being a parent. I would love to find somebody that can just edify all of it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or what would it be like to sit down with Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch? What's that? Like, what was that? Like, honest to God, right? What's that conversation like with a son and a father? That's interesting to me, right? Or sitting down with the Roys from Succession, right? That's fascinating to me, right?
Oh man, that was a great series though, man. It was so good. Oh my gosh, one of the best series ever. I just was like, oh man, that was wild. Anyway, so we're not here to talk about that, but I love your ideas, and I agree with you, Keith. I think those are, again, future conversations to engage people with, and also those that are listening or watching today, just comment. Let us know what you think would be some great topics or people that we should definitely connect with.
Yes,
because again, this is collaboration here. We want to be here to serve, and the only way you can do that is we get your feedback.
That's the plan. That's the plan.
Yeah, this is great.
Awesome, man. And listen, Nation, 2% Nation, Business Athlete Nation, there's a lot of good individual conversations happening out there with Lex Friedman and Joe Rogan, but we're looking for the Keith and Dai awesome dad conversations. So if you're somebody who says, hey, you got to talk to that dad, send them our way. And one last thing, Mr. Manuel, I will throw out there for you, my friend.
All right.
So all the other dads out there that have awesome hair, you got to come on the show to compete with Dai Manuel. Because one thing that we did want to consider, I wanted to consider, was two dads, 2% better with awesome hair, because I have awesome flow too. I got it under a cap today, but I'm telling you, all you dads out there, man, bring your bald skulls or bring your awesome flow to the show.
Listen, Keith, the way I look at it is you've got this.
Yeah.
This is 47 years and going. It just never showed up here, but it showed up here. That's all it is, man. It's all good. You got both. So I
do. That's exactly it. All right, let's get out of here, man. We've been chatting for 30. It's been our goal, 31 minutes or so. Let's get out of here. We will see our audience next week. Everybody, thanks for joining Keith and Dai today. 2%, two dads in the lab trying to be 2% better. We'll get better at that every week.
We will, man. We'll nail it. And great work, Keith. Thank you for, man, you're the tech wizard that makes this happen. So I appreciate you, and I'm excited for this project. And man, welcome parents, welcome all. And we can't wait to connect with you dads. Be friends, reach out, and we look forward to hosting you on the show too.
That's it. All right, dads, come join the Keith and Dai boy band.